Hello, music fans. Welcome to Bands and Beers with Brennen. I'm your host, Brennen. The band today is Pink Floyd, and the beer is a Stitch in Time IPA by Wellington Brewery. And today, my guest is Alon. We previously talked about Gentle Giant, Porcupine Tree, and Yes. And really happy to chat with Alon again about Pink Floyd. How are you doing, Alon?
Hey, Brennen, it's good to be here again to talk about one of my favorite bands. My beer today is a Kronenberg Blank. I actually have a beer and not just a cup of tea this time, so I'm really getting into the spirit of the show.
Even though it is not 12 o'clock yet, we're recording our beer. Cheers.
It's never too early for a bit of day drinking.
Yeah, just one won't hurt us. All right, for the format today, we talked about starting by talking about what makes Pink Floyd special. Then we're going to rapid fire our bottom five because we're going to do like a worst to best ranking format. And then we'll go one by one, ping ponging back and forth between Alon and I for our top 10 in reverse order. So they have 15 studio albums according to Wikipedia, even though two are soundtracks and one is half live, half studio, but we're going to include those ones in our ranking today. And maybe I'll hand it over to Alon. What makes Pink Floyd special to you, and how did you discover them?
For me personally, I discovered them through my dad, which is the least cool way to discover a band. Um, but yeah, he would always talk about, when he was a kid, he was into rock music and he was into Pink Floyd. And one day for his birthday, when I was like maybe 12 or 13, I decided to get him a CD. And I went out and I knew nothing about Pink Floyd. And I bought him the first CD that I stumbled on, which was Metal. Um, and I remember, first of all, being really confused because there was only 6 songs on the back of it.
Right.
And I'm like, is this like a full CD or is this like some kind of sampler?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that one of the songs was like 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember when I heard it, I was also really confused at first that I didn't think of this music as rock music because at the time that I was, growing up in the 90s, my idea of rock was very narrow. It was just 90s alternative.
Grunge. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Alternative.
was like
Yeah.
Smashing Pumpkins, Nirvana, distorted guitars, dude shouting over it. And here was this like really mellow, folky band with like acoustic guitars. So I'm like, my dad must be mistaken. This isn't rock music.
Yeah.
So that was my first encounter. And then later on in my teenage years, I kind of revisited them again and I got into them a lot more seriously. And I think it was a real turning point for me in my music journey because up to that point, I was really into like fast, heavy technical music. So I was learning to play guitar and I was getting into all these shredders. I was getting into Joe Satriani and Yngwie Malmsteen. And for me, guitar playing was like a sport, it was like the faster
Yes.
you were doing it, the better you were doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Pink Floyd just kind of threw that whole idea out the window for me because there was this band that they weren't playing fast, they weren't doing anything flashy. In fact, sometimes it felt like they were playing intentionally really
It
slow and
is
like
slow.
really
Yeah.
mellow. And it was just beautiful, super enjoyable music. So it really opened my boundaries to other music that wasn't just like fast, heavy, hard, technical.
Cool.
What about you? What's your Pink Floyd discovery story?
I I think I heard some of their hits on the radio, but never did a super deep dive. I would have heard songs like Another Brick in the Wall, Part Two, and Comfortably Numb and stuff like that on the radio. And I always kind of liked it. I was like, oh, it's just like an old classic rock band. Like even growing up my childhood, I was like, yeah, those are good songs. But I never was like in love with it. Um, and then I think there was something about like the dark side of Oz or something. Have you heard that?
Yes,
Like
I've watched
mythology
it.
where you play Dark Side of the Moon along to Wizard of Oz. So my cousin Sean and I, when we were getting into guitar playing and stuff too, and music, and we liked we started liking metal bands like System of a Down and Protest the Hero, but we also kind of like some classic rock stuff like the Beatles and these Pink Floyd songs we heard on the radio. And we heard about, oh, it's like really trippy and crazy if you watch Dark Side of the Moon, or if you watch Wizard of Oz and play Dark Side of the Moon. So I think we saw a bit of that, and that kind of got me more interested in that particular album, Dark Side of the Moon. And then when I went to university, I started listening to more like classic 70s prog rock, got more into bands like Yes and King Crimson, um, and then Pink Floyd and Rush. And I just, once I listened to their whole catalog, I realized there's a lot more going on than just the classic rock hits that you hear on the radio. They have a lot of variety. They have some prog epics. They have some really interesting conceptual albums. They have this whole era that I didn't know about, like the whole like psychedelic pop stuff at the beginning, which is kind of funny and fun. So I really enjoy them once I started really understanding all their catalog.
Yeah, I also watched the Dark Side of Oz sync up. It's pretty cool. There's moments in it that are like that feel really synced up. Like the first time the movie goes into color is right when the cash registers start ringing in money.
Yeah.
And I remember when I saw it, I'm like, oh, this is totally intentional. But the frustrating thing is that Dark Side of the Moon is like what, 45 minutes,
Yeah,
and
the
The
movie's
Wizard of
long.
Oz is like 2 hours. So in the
That's a lot.
theater where I was watching this, by the time the first run through of Dark Side of the Moon ended, they just repeated the entire Dark Side of the Moon, and then they started playing it a third time already. And at
Yeah.
that point, I'm like, okay, I'm a little bit sick of this.
So you saw this in a theater?
Yeah, yeah. There's a
Oh
Bloor
wow.
Cinema downtown that plays like
The place.
weird kind
Yeah.
of, non-mainstream movies.
Okay.
And they actually, they have like monthly showings of The Room and the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh
And one
yeah.
of the
Cult
things they do,
classics.
yeah, yeah, lots of cult classics. And one of the things that they do is the Dark Side of Oz.
Hmm. That's interesting. I think we just found somebody who synced up the audio on YouTube way back when we were in high school, and we're just kind of watching it there. So didn't have the whole theatrical experience that you had. That's pretty interesting.
That's probably a better way to do it, to be honest, because then you can stop watching it before the third run through of
Yeah,
Dark
I
Side
don't
of the
think I
Moon.
watched the whole thing, if I recall correctly. Though maybe I don't remember.
I think as far as hearing songs on the radio, Another Brick in the Wall Part Two is also one of the first songs that I heard. And I think it's funny because a lot of time, I think a lot of people, that was their intro, and they thought of this band as like, like just that their message was like, yeah, school sucks, kind of like, that Alice Cooper song, School's Out
Right,
for the
schools.
Summer.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you actually listen to the Wall album, that's just like, it's just one piece of it. It's just one of the
Yeah,
bricks in the wall, right?
right.
Um, and it's not just like a general school sucks song. It's about specifically about like sadistic British schoolmasters.
Right. Yeah, you almost have to hear the whole album to get the whole context of every little song
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, maybe we'll jump into your bottom five and we'll go quickly, and you could say like a favorite song from each. And I guess I could say that I don't really think Pink Floyd has any bad albums. For me, there are just some that are like a bit less like exciting to me. So that's kind of what my bottom five is, more like, I wouldn't say they're bad for me. They're just like not something that I'm going to reach for and play often. Not
Mm.
sure if it's the same for you.
No, I disagree with that.
Oh, you think there are some that you think are actively bad?
I think there's one or two that I would say are actively
Okay.
unlistenable. And I'm going to start off with Uma Guma,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
I think is just like, it was this weird in between era where, on their first album, they had Sid Barrett, and then he left the band because he was suffering from schizophrenia. And
Yeah.
I felt like after he left, there was kind of like a bit of a vacuum of leadership in the band, and they were just experimenting with different psychedelic sounds.
Yeah.
And in this album, the psychedelia that they're experimenting with is just lots of avant-garde noise, and it just feels very half-baked. It feels like each one of those suites is supposed to showcase a different band member. Sisyphus, part 3 kind of sounds like a toddler banging on a piano. Oh, yeah. And a lot of it is quite unlistenable.
And weird animal sounds and stuff.
Oh my God, yes. Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave and grooving with a pict. I mean, it's Roger Waters playing around with tape, experiments, speeding up his voice, slowing down his voice. It's kind of cool, I guess, but it doesn't need to be on an album. It's a novelty thing.
Yeah.
I do like the song Grantchester Meadows, though, because it is a song, which is more than I can say for a lot of the stuff on here.
Would that be your favorite then?
Yeah, I'll put that up as my favorite. It's a nice folky song, lots of pretty nature imagery, birds chirping. I like that one. My number 14 is Endless River, which is their very, very last album. At this point, Roger Waters has been out of the band for 20 years, and I think their keyboardist, Rick Wright, he died. So they kind of released this as a bit of a tribute to him. The album is like 99% instrumental, and it's mostly snippets, which were leftovers from the previous album, from Division Bell. And it just feels like it feels like a low effort release. It feels like they're just giving you the dregs. But I put it higher than Umaguma just because it's more listenable. It's very backgroundy. It feels like it could be like music that you could like meditate to or do yoga to, but it's not actively obnoxious like Sisyphus or something like that.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think my favorite song on there is On Noodle Street.
On Noodle Street, okay.
Yeah, it fits the theme of the album because most of the album is noodling. But I think that's a fun one. My number 13 is More, which is a movie soundtrack. And this one I actually enjoy. This is a good album. It just doesn't really stack up to the rest of the albums, which feel very planned out, very consistent. Sometimes there's a concept. Here it feels like it's a bunch of songs with an inconsistent tone. There's a bunch of songs that are just like meant to be snippets of soundtrack from the movie, like dramatic theme or party sequence, which I don't know why you'd want to listen to those outside of watching the movie. But there's also some really great hidden gems on here. I really like the song Cymbeline. I think that's probably my favorite I think is Cirrus Minor. It's the very first one. And it has this like cool spacey vibe, kind of like Astronomy Domine from the first album. And that one I think is definitely my favorite. But overall, it's a cool album to listen to because you get to see all these different sides of Pink Floyd. Like you get to hear the Nile song, which is them doing this like kind of psychedelic Hendrix rock song, which you almost never hear from Pink Floyd. So I definitely like this one. My number 12 is Atom Heart Mother. This one has one of their first super long instrumentals. It has some really cool symphonic parts thrown in, which you don't hear very often. There's a really cool choral section in between. I still don't rank it as high as their more well-known long songs like Shine On You Crazy Diamond or Echoes, just because it feels more jammy and less structured than the other songs. But apart from that, there's some really nice songs on here. I think the only stinker for me is Alon's Psychedelic Breakfast, which is just a guy talking about his breakfast, and you hear him chewing and slurping, and you hear bacon sizzling.
ASMR, maybe.
Yeah, maybe this is like the 1960s version of ASMR. But it didn't give me any tingles or anything like that. It just kind of made me a little bit bored. Um, Favorite song on this one is the title track, Adam Park Mother.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And my number 11 is Momentary Lapse of Reason. And this was their first album in the 80s after Roger Waters has left. Um, and again, it kind of feels like the band is in this like a bit of a directionless territory, like they don't have a leader anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it sounds very, very 80s. Um, you get that like gated snare sound, so every snare just sounds like, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I hate that.
I feel like that's a common theme in a lot of the bands that we've talked about. Like when we talked about the 80s Yes albums, they also, as soon as
Yeah.
they get into the 80s, you get that production. It sounds like it's coming out of the bottom of a well.
Yeah, I feel like I heard that there was, I think I heard one of their 80s albums had like a remix or remaster where they redid the drums, but I don't remember where I heard that or if that's true or if that's this one, but I haven't necessarily listened to that remaster with better drums, but maybe that would help a lot.
That's cool. I would love to hear that. Yeah. Um, I
Might
bet
have to
those
give it a
drums,
listen.
they probably sounded very modern at the time that they were recorded. Nobody
Right.
knew how dated they would sound in like 10 years.
Yeah. What was your favorite song on Momentary Lapse of Reason?
Definitely Sorrow. Um,
Oh, okay.
I feel like lyrically, Roger Waters was the best
Mm-hmm.
lyric writer in the band, because I feel like he had the most to say. Like he was a very opinionated, sometimes a very bitter person, but
Right.
he wrote very good lyrics. And I feel like when he left, there was a bit of a vacuum of good lyric writing. But I think Sorrow is kind of the exception to that. It's just like this very poignant song, and I think David Gilmour really pulled through with that one.
All right, awesome. That
What
rounds
about
out
you?
your bottom five. My bottom five, we have three in common in our bottom fives, and I totally understand all your picks and why you picked them, but I'll do mine in a slightly different order. So my bottom one, number 15, is actually going to be More. And I think I would just be biased because I generally don't really like soundtrack albums. There are a few exceptions, but when I'm listening to albums to enjoy them as albums, I kind of want them to be designed as an album listening experience rather than to accompany a movie. So I find it's always hard to really get into the soundtrack albums. But this is their third album. It's from 1969. It's the first one that they did a soundtrack for out of two. And I guess the film is also called More, but I've never seen it. I
It's
don't
really
know.
hard to find.
Yeah, it might be rare. And this is kind of like it's more like psychedelic folky stuff. Uh, my favorite song here would be the Crying Song, which is the third track. It's by Roger Waters and it's kind of slow acoustic. But it's actually got like very Pink Floyd sounding chord progression. It's pretty nice, but it's nothing special. I think you said your favorite was Cirrus Minor. I actually found that kind of one of my least favorite. I noted that it kind of starts with like bird sounds for a minute before the acoustic guitar comes in.
Yeah.
I feel like they went a bit too far sometimes with the ambient noise. We kind of talked about that and commented on that with Porcupine Tree in our Porcupine Tree video. And I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's probably where he got that inspiration, where Stephen Wilson got that inspiration to do that kind of thing. So that's not really my thing, not really into it. Uh, but it's not bad. Like it's just kind of more of a boring backgroundy album, kind of like what you said about Endless River. Although I find Endless River more enjoyable than this to me.
If you were to chop off the minute of bird sounds, would you like Cirrus Minor more?
I would like it more, but I still wouldn't really like it. Like it, it would just be like more less annoying, more interesting for me to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my number 14 would be Amagama. Like you said, I pretty much agree with a lot of the things you said. We're just considering like the studio side of it because like the live recordings are fine. It's like a fine live album, but the second disc, it's like a lot of solo compositions by each member, and it's kind of annoying and irritating. It's more annoying and irritating than more, but I put it a little higher because to me at least it's like more interesting to listen to. It's like more sounds more pleasant than Amagama, but Amagama is less boring than more. It's very experimental and avant-garde and kind of, it's psychedelic rock for the most part, but some parts are like spacey and progressive, and there's just kind of weird experiments. Like you said, they were experimenting in the studio with slowing down and speeding up. And at the time, I think this stuff would be kind of innovative in 1969. It's not like now where you could just do all that in your DAW, and it's like anybody can speed up and slow down things and loop animal sounds. It kind of was cool. So I see it as more of like a historical thing but not something that's fun to listen to. And my favorite song would be "The Narrow Way" Part 3, which is by David Gilmour, and he sings on it. And it's the one that sounds the most like what we would come to know as the Pink Floyd sound. It's got some cool guitar effects, nice piano, solid vocals with harmonies. But yeah, some of the weird, like annoying things we talked about, like Sisyphus Part 3 has weird animal sounds in it. Several species of small furry animals gathered together in a cave grouping with a pick is a funny and ridiculous song title, but it's literally just weird animal sounds being looped and
it's a truthful song title.
Very truthful. That is what it's going to sound like. So they pulled off what they were going for, I guess, if that's what they were going for, but it's not for me. My number 13 is Obscured by Clouds, the other soundtrack. I think you might like this one more than I do, but I'm not really into the soundtrack stuff. I guess this is for a French film called La Vallée. Wikipedia calls it a progressive rock album, but to me, it's pretty much just soft rock. That I don't hear anything progressive here. Like it's all very like straightforward 4/4 songs. Nothing. There's no like virtuosity, no genre bending, no long epics. Not really much classical or jazz influence. It's all really just like folky, soft rock. But it's not bad. It's kind of more on the boring side for me for Pink Floyd. I think my favorite song here would be Childhood's End, which is by David Gilmour and lead vocals by Gilmour. It's a pretty great song, but there's a lot of like ups and downs throughout the album. It's not like a cohesive album that I'd want to put on from start to end. And where am I at now? 12. Number 12 would be The Final Cut. This is their 12th album, and it's the last one to feature Roger Waters. And it's the only album that doesn't have Richard Wright on it because he left the band after the Wall sessions. And it's kind of like artsy rock more than prog. I kind of prefer their proggier sounding albums. And all the songs on this are written by Roger Waters, and he does lead vocals on all of them. Although Gilmour does like backing vocals on some. So it feels kind of just like it's a Roger Waters solo album rather than Pink Floyd. And
it basically is.
Yeah, like there's nothing like abrasive or offensive like Amagama, but and it isn't as boring as More, but it's just still like a little boring. Yeah, but my favorite song would be Not Now, John, which has some great female backing vocals, great guitar solo from David Gilmour, has a nice bass line, kind of like one of the more harder rocking songs on the album, has some angry, gritty sounding vocals from Roger Waters.
It's basically industrial music.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they invented industrial music with that song because it's got like all these machines grinding in the background. You hear all this factory noises. It's very cool.
Yeah, I think maybe there was, I forget which song, but I think there was one of the songs on their like really early albums that has like almost like a scream in it. And sometimes I try to figure out like where like screaming and music originated. And I think there was a Pink Floyd song, but I totally forget what it was. Damn, I need to figure out what that was, and maybe I'll like put a little thing below the video saying what song I'm I'm talking about, but I remember hearing some scream and I was like, wow, is that one of the first like screams in music?
The final cut has a scream on it on the Gunner's Dream, where
Right,
he's like, "This dream is driving me insane." Ah!
right. But I think that 1983 is a little late for like the first screams in music. Like there were definitely
Yeah.
some before that, but I feel like it was one of the it must have been one of the 60s albums because that would be one of the ones where I'd actually kind of be impressed and think like maybe this is one of the earliest examples.
Mhm.
I just don't remember what song I'm thinking of. And then the last to round out my bottom five, I'm going to go with the Endless River, like you had in your bottom five, and it's their 15th and final album, and it was released after Richard Wright's death. He passed away in 2008, but he still appears on the album because it's more like outtakes from stuff recorded during the Division Bell sessions. And only one track has vocals louder than words. Well, I guess there are some that have like background vocals, but only this one has like lead vocals with like lyrics and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but my favorite would probably be "It's What We Do," which is the second song on the album, and I like the first song kind of flows into it perfectly. It sounds like it's kind of a one completely uninterrupted jam session, but there's just a lot of like beautiful synth soundscapes and cool acoustic guitar chords, and it's reminiscent of one of my favorite Pink Floyd tracks, which is "Welcome to the Machine." It kind of gave me that vibes of that song, so that's kind of why it stuck with me and why I like it. And the drums kick in. There's a great synth lead part, great guitar leads. So that'd be my favorite on this song. And I agree with what you said. Like this album's kind of background music, but it is actually good for what it is. Like I'll listen to the whole album and I'll be like, yeah, I kind of enjoy it. I wouldn't say it's one of their classics, but it's good like background music if you're working or studying and there's like nothing offensive. I wouldn't even say it's that boring. It is kind of samey, but
Yeah.
there's stuff there to capture my interest from time to time too.
I feel like if I'm looking for background music, I'd prefer that YouTube video of lo-fi hip hop girls studying.
I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, it's like one of the most famous ones. There's just like a picture of this girl studying, and it's just 24 hours a day playing lo-fi hip hop for you to
Interesting.
put in the background of whatever it is you're doing.
Cool. I think we might have time to talk about our number 10 album before we go to our first commercial break. Because we've got our free Zoom account here that's given us 6:45 to talk through your number 10.
My number 10 is the Division Bell, which was their second album after Roger Waters left. So this was the 90s already, and they're on this schedule of releasing one album per decade. Um, I like it more than Momentary Lapse of Reason. It has the 80s sound is gone, which is great. Um, I really like What Do You Want From Me? That's kind of like a cool, groovy song that almost reminds me of like Money or Have a Cigar or one of those songs.
Yeah.
It's got a really good groove and it's got a super catchy chorus with the female choir in the background singing along. So it definitely sounds like Floyd. Um, but I think my favorite, again, just like a Momentary Lapse, is the final track, which is like a very somber, sad, almost like a goodbye song called High Hopes.
Right.
And it almost felt like it was the band saying like goodbye, this is our final album. And I thought it was until Endless River came out a few years back. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Also,
I
they
think
released a song like was it like this year? Did you hear that song? Like Pink Floyd came out with like a song. I think it was to support Ukraine. Kind of a
yeah,
thing.
yeah, there was one. It was with a Ukrainian musician on it. Um, yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that one, to be honest. I mean, I
Yeah,
appreciate the political cause that they were going for and support it, but like musically, it didn't do anything for me.
yeah, me too. It's just interesting. It's interesting to see them making music again.
Yeah.
All right, I will go through my number 10 and then we'll go to commercial break. So my number 10 is going to be a momentary lapse of reason, one that you said it had in your bottom five. I think we're like pretty aligned here on most of the things that we're saying.
Not
Um,
completely. You've got some surprises coming your way based on
yeah.
what you said so far. I have
Okay.
some unpopular opinions coming up.
All right. Well, yeah, Momentary Lapse of Reason is the first album without Roger Waters, and it's kind of more of a radio rock album. There's still some hints of their progressive rock sounds. Um, my favorite song here would be The Dogs of War, which is written by Gilmore and Anthony Moore. I'm not sure who Anthony Moore is, but I was kind of checking the song credits for the songs that I liked and seeing who the writers were. Um, this one's a bit more of a rocker. It has a blues shuffle, more aggressive vocals from Gilmore, and a cool saxophone part in here. I also like the song that you said, Sorrow, and another song on the Turning Away, which is also by Gilmore and Moore. But it's kind of like a soft 80s power ballad vibes, but it's got a nice melody, powerful and emotional guitar solo. So it's like a pretty good album. I think we commented on that drum sound. I also don't like that at all. Um, but it's kind of like catchy radio rock, pretty accessible. Nothing too horrible about it other than the drum sound. But it's just not what I want from Pink Floyd. All right, we'll take a quick commercial break and we'll come back and we'll do our top nine. Don't you hate it when you have to take a bunch of different pills to deal with your pain relief, weight loss, anxiety, depression, and erectile dysfunction? Now you can just take one pill for all those needs. Mikey's Magical Multi-Purpose Pills, solving all of your problems. They're chewable and they taste great. They come in strawberry, blueberry, or orange flavor. Mikey's Magical Multi-Purpose Pills. Use the discount code UNICORN for 30% off. Welcome back, viewers. Hope you enjoyed that word from our sponsors. And now we're at Alon's ninth favorite Pink Floyd album.
My ninth favorite is Obscured by Clouds, which is the soundtrack album that you were talking about before.
Yeah.
When I was really, really deep in my Pink Floyd fandom, I actually tracked down this movie, which was no easy task because it's like this obscure French art film.
Yeah. Oh, where'd you find it?
I found a guy that was selling it on eBay from France. And, and I actually ordered it from there. And it was a DVD. And it was an interesting movie. It was very much an art film in the sense that there isn't like a clear plot or anything. I mean, there is in the beginning. It's sort of about this rich woman who goes to this tropical country and she runs a boutique in Paris where they sell feathers of exotic birds, and she's trying to find this bird of paradise. And she meets these hippies there that are in this country. They're trying to find this mythical valley. It's called the Valley Obscured by Clouds, which is where the album gets its name from. And they decide to go on this trip together, and they basically convert her into a hippie, and she leaves her fancy rich lifestyle behind. And they go through the jungle and they meet all these primitive cultures and everything. And eventually they get to this valley, but it's not clear what happens after. It's not clear because they've run out of food and they're all exhausted at this point. So it's not clear whether they die and the valley is like heaven or whatever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Was
it's
there
an interesting
subtitles
thing.
on it, or you watched it in French?
There's definitely subtitles. My French is terrible.
Okay.
The Canadian school system has failed me. Um, but yeah, there's some good songs on there, and it's cool to hear the Pink Floyd songs in the context of this movie. My favorites are Childhood's End, same as yours, and it feels like it's kind of the same spirit as future Pink Floyd, singing about, how fleeting life is and how, the loss of innocence, things like that. So it feels like Childhood is and could be a lost song from Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
And I also really like Free For, which is just a classic sardonic Roger Waters song, where it's like this really cheery song where he's singing about dying and shuffling around the sick room and talking to yourself as you die, which is just classic Roger Waters.
Yeah, I
What
like that
about
song
you?
too.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I like that song too, that you said, uh, Free For as well.
Hmm.
My number nine is the Division Bell, and this is their 14th album, the second one without Roger Waters. Again, it's kind of more of a radio rock album, um, like Momentary Lapse of Reason. Has some hints of progressive rock. My favorite song is the same one you said, High Hopes, which is it the last song on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's by Gilmore. It has bells ringing throughout. It has a nice piano part, catchy vocal melody. Yeah, it's kind of like a sing along chorus, like the grass was greener, the light was brighter.
Hmm.
Pretty good. I think the second last line of the song is also has the endless river in it, which kind of goes on to become the name of their last album, and I guess that's where the line came from. So I noticed that as I was listening through and took note of it. So that was pretty cool. But their best stuff is still yet to come in our rankings. So with that, I'll hand it over to your number eight.
My number eight is A Saucer Full of Secrets. This is going way back to the 60s. This is their second album. I think it's their first one without Sid Barrett, or mostly without Sid Barrett. At this
Right, he
point,
does one song on it, maybe.
just one song,
Yeah.
which also happens to be my favorite song on the album, because it's just such a heartbreaking song because you can just literally hear him unraveling throughout the song. Um, it's a song basically about dissociating from the outside world. The instrumental part, it's called Jug Band Blues, and the instrumental part has a jug band playing really obnoxiously and badly.
Mhm.
Um, and then Sid Barrett joins in and he just goes la 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 over the band. And then there's this moment where the band kind of fades away, but he's still going la 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 la, and it just sounds like reality slipping away, and all that's left is his own voice in his own head.
Well,
Just maybe I'm reading too much into this. I
yeah,
don't know.
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder if that's like the intention of the artist behind making it, or if it's like sometimes people can they know about the situation with the band and the individuals and can kind of read into the meaning of the songs from that. I wonder.
It's hard to say. I think lyrically it does sound like he is saying goodbye to the band because he knows that they're kicking him out at this point. Um,
Right.
and he's saying it's awfully considerate of you to think of me here,
Oh,
and I'm most inclined to thank you for letting me here, but I'm not here. So he's basically saying like, oh, thanks for letting me have one last song. Um,
cool.
and yeah, it just after all that instrumental noise fades away, it's just him with an acoustic guitar and he sings. And what exactly is a dream and what exactly is a joke, which is just like such a chilling way to end his career with his band. So yeah, definitely my favorite song on there.
Cool. Yeah. Now I have to listen to that song again now and hear it in a different with a different perspective. My number eight is Adam Hart Mother, their fifth album. And this one is like I consider this to be kind of more in line with progressive rock style that I really like. Um, and there's some still lots of experimental and psychedelic stuff scattered throughout. You mentioned Alan's psychedelic breakfast being a little weird and a bit of psychedelic nonsense. Um, I agree with that, but some of the parts of it actually sound pretty cool. So I don't hate it, but it's definitely not my favorite. My favorite on here would be the same one you said, the title track, Adam Hurt Mother. It's like a 24-minute epic, takes up all of side one, and I like how the whole band has writing credits on this, Mason, Gilmore, Waters, and Wright. And they also have Ron Green who does the orchestration, so that it's feels like a lot more of like a team effort. Some of their songs at other parts in their career are more like individual contributions to the band, but it's kind of cool when they do these team effort songs. And it turned into a pretty awesome prog epic with an orchestra and a choir. And I think they even preview the chord progression for Breathe from Dark Side of the Moon. That might be, maybe I just imagined that, but I wonder.
No, you're right. You're right. There's that chord progression, the E minor ninth to the A7. Yeah.
Yeah. The part of this song that I don't like is when it goes into like some ambient noise about like 2/3 of the way through in the fifth section called "Mind Your Throats, Please," which is, I guess, a good name for it. It's got dissonant keyboards and then it has this like high pitched yodeling sound or something. So I was like, yo. It's like, okay, do we really need this for 2.5 minutes before going back to something that actually sounds more palatable and it's like a song?
It was the 60s. There's no such thing as a too long jam.
Yeah, so I think every part of the song was pretty good except for that. That was really annoying. So they probably could have cut like 2.5 minutes of the song and I would have liked it more. But definitely still a cool song. And my second favorite on there would be Summer 68, which is a song by Richard Wright, and he does the lead vocals on it, which is not typical. Usually you hear Gilmore or Waters singing, but it's nice to hear Wright singing. He's a pretty good singer too, and it's a great song.
Yeah, I think all four members actually get some vocals in.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the only ones that Nick Mason, the drummer, gets are "One of These Days I'm Going to Cut You into Little Pieces." Off of
Yeah,
that.
he sings the least, I think, out of all of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Not everyone can be a Phil Collins drummer singer.
Yeah, yeah. Phil Collins is pretty great. All right, we're on your number 7.
My number 7 is their very first album, The Piper at the Gates of Dawn. And this album is Syd Barrett at the lead. He has this very childlike, naive way of writing songs.
Yeah.
There's lyrics about gnomes, there's lyrics about unicorns. There's the song Bike, which it almost sounds like a little kid you showing off all his cool toys to you. He's like, look, I've got a bike, you can ride it if you like. I've got a mouse, and he hasn't got a house. I've got a clan of gingerbread men. And it's just really endearing. It's because it doesn't feel forced. It feels like this is who he really is. And even when he's writing lyrics, sometimes it feels like he stretches out the meter to make words fit. Which I don't know. I think it's really cute. And it's cool to hear this side of Pink Floyd, because I find that when you listen to the prime era 70s Pink Floyd that everybody knows and loves, it's so polished. It's so like every single note is just considered. And this album is like the opposite. It just feels like really rough and spontaneous.
Yeah, like it just kind of made up on the fly. And,
yeah, absolutely.
But has this youthful innocence and creativity to it.
Yeah, and it has a lot of really great songs. I think a lot of their stuff from the early era, like Umaguma, Saucer Full of Secrets. There's lots of jams in there. There's lots of noise sections, lots of breakfast munching. But here, there's just like Lucifer Sam is like this cool surf spy riff. Astronomy Domain, Domine. I don't know. That's probably my favorite song on there. It has this like really neat spacey vibe with a really interesting chord progression that I haven't heard anywhere else. Take Up Thy Stethoscope and Walk is a very pretentiously named song, but yeah, it has this really cool beat to it. I'm not sure if we're considering See Emily Play, because I think that was on the British release of the album, but maybe not the American one. But
or maybe it's the opposite, because I think in the UK it was released as like a single, and that's when they actually became popular, and then they made Piper at the Gates of Dawn. So I think it's not. If I'm looking at Wikipedia now, it's on the UK version they didn't have See Emily play, but then on the US one they did because that single wasn't released in the US, so they kind of just released Piper at the Gates of Dawn with it. That's
It
what it
makes sense.
looks like.
It needs to be on there. It's a great song.
Yeah, it's a good song for sure.
It's definitely one of the more commercially viable songs from that era because it's very kind of sing along. It does have some cheesy like psychedelic moments. Like there's this one section where there's just two bars of like sped up, uh, you know, piano before it goes into the next verse, and that part sounds a little cheesy in retrospect. But I think it's a great album overall.
Cool. Yeah, I like that one too. But my number 7 is going to be one that you've said already, which is A Saucer Full of Secrets, the second album, 1968, and their first one to feature David Gilmour. And it's still kind of before I would call them prog. It's kind of before prog was even really invented, I guess. It's proto prog, if you were to if you want to call it that, because I guess a lot of people say progressive rock kind of started with 1969 with King Crimson and the Court of the Crimson King, though there were a little bit of it kind of like faded into that with stuff like this and other bands like the Beatles doing some more progressive stuff. But this is pretty cool. I think my favorite song on here would be A Saucer Full of Secrets, which is another one where it's like the whole band effort. I guess Syd Barrett wasn't really involved in it as he only did the one song, but Wright, Mason, Gilmour, and Waters all kind of teamed up. It's essentially an instrumental, but it has a lot of like wordless vocals by Gilmour and Wright. So you still get the vocal sound, you still get some like melody and harmony. And it's kind of long, like 12 minutes, but I guess it's kind of like the beginnings of progressive rock. It's maybe one of the first prog epics. It kind of reminds me of do you know Mike Oldfield? Have you heard any?
Yeah, Tubular Bells.
Yeah, it reminds me of Mike Oldfield's first few albums, which are really cool. So I got a bit of vibes from that. Like maybe Mike Oldfield probably listened to Saucer Full of Secrets and it was maybe an inspiration on him. I'm just assuming, but it gives me vibes of that for sure. And yeah, how about your number 6?
It's interesting that you keep mentioning it like, oh, this is progressive rock. This isn't progressive rock because to me, when I started listening to this band, I didn't know what progressive rock was. And then I separately started listening to prog bands like, Yes. And then when I heard Pink Floyd labeled as progressive rock, I was like, really? I didn't think of them as a prog band. And I can definitely see why they are. But I feel like that, if I wouldn't use them as like a classic example of a progressive rock band because a lot of the things that you associate with prog, like, technical virtuosity, odd time signatures, they don't do that, right?
They do a bit. Like, I mean, I would kind of say David Gilmour is a bit of a virtuoso on the guitar, but it's in a very different way. It's the slow, more emotional, bluesy guitar soloing rather than the faster stuff you hear in prog. And then they do the time signature change thing and they do the long epics. So I think it really depends on what album you're talking about, because some of their albums to me are not progressive rock at all, but then some of them are. But I think the band doesn't really pigeonhole themselves into that. Like some of their stuff is just kind of pop, like psychedelic pop, psychedelic rock. They do experimental avant-garde stuff. They do kind of artsy conceptual rock, but some of it I do think really is prog.
I think it's prog in the sense that it's conceptual and that they're not afraid to break out of the structure of like a short 5-minute verse chorus bridge song.
Yeah, song structure.
So I think they absolutely are. I just wouldn't like use it if I was introducing to someone to prog rock. I wouldn't be like, this is my example of what prog rock is.
Oh yeah, no, you got to go with the Yes and Genesis.
Yeah,
those are probably the two good best examples for me.
So my number six is, this is going to be an unpopular opinion, but this is The Wall.
The Wall, yeah.
And I know this is one of their most popular albums.
Yeah.
For me, I really like The Wall, and I think it works wonderfully as a rock opera. But I find that a lot of the songs, they don't quite stand on their own. Right. They only really work in the context of the album, right? Like, I would never want to listen to The Trial on its own, or Waiting for the Worms, or any of that, right? When you're listening to the album, it progresses the story forward and it makes sense.
Yeah.
But just as an album, I feel like, it's a double album, but I feel like it only has about one album worth of great songs on it. I love Hey You, I love Comfortably Numb, In the Flesh, Mother is great. But yeah, there's a lot of filler in between, and there's a lot of repetition, right? There's like 3 different versions of Another Brick in the Wall. Because of that, I kind of put it a bit lower than their other albums from their prime era of the 70s.
Got it. Which song on there would be your favorite? I know you mentioned Comfortably Numb, Hey You.
It's hard to choose. I think probably Hey You.
Hey You. Yeah, cool. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying about that one. It's there. It is meant to be listened to from start to finish, and there's definitely some songs that don't stand on their own, but they like flow into each other.
They do.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched the movie?
I have not watched the movie.
I
would be interested in watching it, but maybe one day I will.
We absolutely should watch it together. I'd be down for a rewatch.
All right, cool. Yeah, sometime we should watch that. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start doing movie reviews on my channel or something. If they're related to, I think if they're related to like metal, rock, or prog bands, it could kind of fit the theme of my channel. I also haven't seen like the Beatles movies either, and I'm kind of curious about some of those. I don't know if you've seen any of them.
I've been told that they're all terrible.
I've heard that some are terrible, but some are actually kind of good. Yeah, but I'm curious to see for myself, I guess. My number 6 would be Metal, which is their 6th album, and I consider this in like their progressive rock, if we're going to use that term. Period. I think the stuff from like Piper of the Gates of Dawn to Ummagumma is more like psychedelic, and it kind of has hints of prog. But I think from Atom Heart, Mother, and Metal, through to like Animals, I think would actually kind of be their progressive rock period. And then after that, it went more like, I don't know, more kind of mainstream radio rock, but still keeping like artsy. That's kind of how I see their genres. They kind of have those phases of their like psychedelic phase in the 60s, their progressive phase in the 70s up to, but not really including The Wall, although maybe you could kind of include it in their progressive phase. And then they have like their kind of radio rock phase, which is like Final Cut to Division Bell.
I don't know if I'd call Final Cut radio rock. I feel like that's a very radio unfriendly album.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, Final Cut's a bit of an outlier, I guess. I don't know what they were thinking there. It's a Roger Waters solo album. Yeah, Metal, really good. Echoes is my favorite song on there. It's obviously the epic on it, the 23 or 23 and a half minute song. And the whole band contributes again. So I tend to like these ones where the whole band is involved in writing. So you have everybody, Waters, Wright, Gilmore, Mason. Lead vocals are done by Gilmore and Wright. And I think even Andrew Lloyd Webber might have stolen the Phantom of the Opera theme from this. That's what some people say, and I definitely hear it. The
yeah.
So that's
Roger Waters was actually he was really pissed off at Andrew Lloyd
Oh yeah,
Webber for
really?
that. Um, and there's a song on one of his solo albums where he kind of takes a stab at him, where he's one of the lyrics is like um, something plays his tune, the melody still lingers, the piano lid comes crashing down and breaks his fucking fingers.
Oh wow.
Um,
He
yeah,
seems like a really angry guy. Like,
he's a very angry guy. He hates a lot of people, including the rest of Pink Floyd at this point.
yeah, like I mean, he wrote some pretty cool lyrics and stuff, and like he's a great songwriter. But like, okay, man, chill out. Like, yeah, he might have lifted it, but it's really like descending chromatic and ascending. Like, I don't know if it's really unique enough to like be like it's totally copyright infringement. I don't know. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, it is.
it's
It's very eerily similar. I don't know how it would hold up if like say Pink Floyd took Andrew Lloyd Webber to court. Like, would they actually be able to sue him? I'm not sure. I'm not a legal expert on that matter.
I think there's some very specific law, like if you've plagiarized more than 7 consecutive notes, it's considered plagiarism, but under that, it's
That's
fair
it.
game. Yeah.
7 notes. Like, what if it's like a million songs do like descending the chromatic scale, which is 12 notes?
Again, I don't know.
Like that's so ridiculous. I think you need to have a certain there's like a lot of gray area in that area of like musical copyright infringement. So it's really I'm always interested. I watch videos about all the like lawsuits of like musical copyright infringement because I find
Oh
it
yeah.
really interesting. There's a lot of good ones out there. That's a bit of a tangent, but but Echoes is a good song. Um, but there is a long section of ambient spooky noise that I think could have been shorter.
The whale noises.
Yeah, I don't
Do you
know
know how
what
they
it
do
is.
that?
Is it actually whales?
No, it's a crybaby wah pedal that's
Oh,
plugged
okay.
in backwards. So what he did is he plugged in his guitar into the output and then the input into his amp. Um, it it makes these really weird noises. And I've actually tried this on my own guitar. It totally works. If you
Oh,
plug in
nice.
that pedal backwards, you can't play the strings or anything, but if you fiddle with the knobs, it makes these like squealing whale noises. I have no idea why,
Okay,
but it's really cool that they discovered this and used it in a
that
song.
is cool. It's like one of those things where like if they just did it in the background as a sound effect while there's something else interesting going on, it's fine. They seem to indulge their ambient random noise interests a bit too much in their career and draw it on for too long. Maybe it's just me being like more of a like in the modern mindset where I don't want to hear something like that for like too long. Loses my
It's not
interest.
that long though. It's like what, like a minute, something like that.
I actually don't remember how long it was, but I noted that there is like a longer than it needed to be
It
section of
felt
ambient.
longer than it was.
Yeah, it felt too long. It's like, all right, where's this going?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a really good album. I guess my second favorite would be Fearless, which is by Gilmore and Waters. It's good to hear them collaborating. Um, Lead vocals by Gilmore. I think Gilmore is probably my favorite singer in Pink Floyd. So I tend to like a lot of the songs where he does the lead. And there's a cool like main acoustic guitar riff on this
Mhm.
song for the intro too.
What did you think of Seamus?
Amos is pretty good.
The
I guess
dog.
Gilmore does the vocals on that too. And oh, I think everybody has writing credits on it too. So that's kind of cool. But it's
I think
like it's a short, simple bluesy acoustic song. There's dogs barking too, right?
there's a dog named Mademoiselle Knobs who belongs to one
Nice.
of their friends.
Okay.
Who they had this friend that told them like, "Hey, I have this dog that when you play the blues for her, she sings along." And the band is like, "Get her on an album." So they got her into the
Great.
studio, and there's actually like a live recording. There's a video you can watch of.
Oh, sweet. Oh,
I
they
think it's
videotaped them recording this song.
not specifically Seamus. They had a second song with the
Oh,
dog that's not on any albums called Mademoiselle Knobs.
Oh
where
wow,
it's like this greyhound dog, and it's amazing. You play the blues and she sings along.
that is great. Yeah, that song's pretty fun. Like it kind of feels like a silly like song that the Beatles might have done. You know how the Beatles did some more like jokey songs.
Yeah,
Kind of gives me that vibe.
yeah. It's not. It can be a serious song when you've got a dog as your main vocalist.
Yeah, that's great. All right, how about your number five?
My number five is Animals.
Okay.
This is Roger Waters' album through and through, um, and it's kind of a finger pointing album for me. He's basically pointing his finger at different groups of people and calling them
Mhm.
dogs, pigs, sheep. And
Yeah.
the dogs are like the cutthroat businessman. The pigs are the power hungry politician. And the sheep are the ordinary folk. They're you and
Right.
me. And they're
I
just like
wonder.
regular people who get exploited by the dogs and the pigs.
Right. I wonder which
Uh,
one Roger considers himself to be.
oh, he's above all this. He's
He's like,
neither.
I'm enlightened, so I'm not a dog, a pig, or a sheep.
I think that's the thing that kind of irked me about this album is that it's
Okay.
all finger pointing, and there's no like introspection actually.
Mm,
Um, it feels very much like a punk rock album in a way because of that. Like
interesting.
he's just pointing at other people, and it's a very bitter and angry album when you take a look at the lyrics,
Yeah.
especially in Dogs when he's just taking so much sadistic pleasure in this businessman dying of cancer,
Oh
which
my God.
is
Yeah.
which is like, come on, dude, like take it easy. But there is a lot of great music on this album,
Hmm.
and um, my favorite is Sheep on there. Um, I love how long he sings those long phrases when he's like bleating and babbling. They fell on his neck with a scream.
Oh
Wave
yeah.
upon yeah, when he's like wave upon wave of demented Avengers march cheerfully out of obscurity into the dream. It's just like such an awesome long lyric.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
pretty
can
cool.
listen to it forever.
Doesn't the like held vocal line in that like bleed into the synthesizer too? Like the vocals fade out and a synthesizer fades in or something?
Yes, yeah, the very last note when he goes scream, it just kind of blends into it. So good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that effect. All right. Yeah, my number five is The Piper at the Gates of Dawn, their first album from 1967, kind of more their psychedelic rock poppy phase. Um, and my favorite song is the same one that you said, Astronomy. Is it Domine or no mine? I don't know how to pronounce it
No
either.
idea. It's not a
Um,
lyric in the song.
yeah, and it's by Barrett. I think pretty much almost every song on here by Sid Barrett. I think some are like co-written with Waters, but Barrett was kind of the leader of the band at this point, really just for this album. And it's pretty cool. It's almost like a whole other band, but really awesome stuff. Um, yeah, I like Barrett's lead vocals too. He does pretty cool stuff. I think Barrett and Wright sing on Astronomy Domine, and they use the like chromatic falling sound, like going like which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. Um, Flaming is also a good song where Barrett does the lead vocals. And I like how you said they sound like kid songs because I said the same thing. It sounds a bit like a kid song, but at the same time, it's also like super trippy and psychedelic. So I don't really think it's like kid songs because you can kind of tell it's like, wow, this is like an acid trip. It's like a kid song, but like on acid.
Yeah, there's definitely a darkness to it.
Yeah. Really catchy though, and also it's like really British sounding. Like you can really hear like their accents. I feel like it's the most British sounding album they do. They a lot of their albums are pretty British sounding, but like this is like the most British sounding in my opinion. Like they're saying things like on this song, "Yippee, you can't see me, but I can." You. It's just
That's a pretty creepy lyric when you think about
yeah,
it. I
yeah,
get
exactly.
like real peeping Tom vibes from now on.
Yeah, it's like you think this is a kids music album, but then when you like read the lyrics and you really listen to it, you're like, I don't want my kid listening to this.
Yeah, don't play this for your kids.
Yeah, because it just I'm pretty sure this song "Flaming," when I read the lyrics, it like seems like it's just about being high, and like a but going on like a fun magical adventure while you're high. Like that's kind of what pretty much what I get from most of these songs. Like maybe there's some deeper meanings. You said there's songs like the gnome and stuff like that. It's just, silly kid songs about gnomes, but I'm pretty sure it's all just about being high. I think it's fairly well documented that Sid Barrett liked those kinds of drugs, like the psychedelic, I don't know, acid, LSD kind of stuff. So I'm pretty sure that's what was going on here.
He was an LSD aficionado.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, you're number four.
My number four is Wish You Were Here. Um, I think that Shine On You Crazy Diamond is just like one of their best, probably their best long form kind of extended epic. And I love, on the album, it's split up into the first half and the second half. So it kind of sandwiches the entire album. But I love
Yeah.
listening to it as an entire song, beginning to end, all
Oh,
the
cool.
different parts, however many there are, like 21 or 22. Um, and it's cool to know the story about it as well, about how Sid Barrett walked into the studio during the recording of the album, and they didn't even recognize him because he was bald. He'd gained a whole bunch of weight,
Oh,
and then they wrote this song about him because they were so sad to see their old friend like this. And he's the crazy diamond, right?
mm-hmm.
And, that's why they're saying, like, remember when you were young, you'd shine like the sun. Um,
Yeah. I always
and
wondered if like how shine starts with the S and U starts with the Y and diamond starts with the D, if it's kind of like trying to spell Sid in a way. I,
oh,
I kind of thought of
maybe.
that. Like I heard the story that you told about like how he came into the studio, and I knew this was about him. And I kind of looked at the words and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's also kind of what they were thinking with the song title. I don't know this, but it's something that I noticed.
There is a C there from the crazy that doesn't quite fit into
Yeah.
that theory.
Yeah, and the O from the on, but I did notice that there's a SY and a D. I
Yeah,
thought maybe there was something to it, or maybe I'm just on LSD.
maybe. These are our own personal Pink Floyd conspiracy theories.
Yes, but that's my conspiracy theory.
Um, so I'm gonna disagree with you about Welcome to the Machine. I know you said it's one of your favorite Floyd songs. To
Yeah.
me, it's one of my least favorite Floyd
Oh,
songs.
really? I love it.
Yeah. I just find that it's very kind of gloomy and monotonous, and it's a bit too on the nose as far as what it's trying to tell you. Like it's being sung from the perspective of the machine, and it's telling you that no matter what you do, even if you try to rebel, you're going to be assimilated into the system.
Mhm.
Um, it does have some cool synthesizer sounds, but overall, it's just like it feels very gloomy and like just overbearing and monotonous for me.
Okay.
But I really,
Oh, I think I just lost your audio. Are you still? Okay, yeah, I can
yeah,
hear you well now.
are we
Uh,
good? Okay.
yeah, we're good. We were talking about uh, "Wish You Were Here," and I don't know exactly what you were saying when I lost you.
I was talking about Welcome to the Machine.
Right.
How
Welcome to the
um,
Machine. Yeah, exactly.
not my favorite Floyd song. It's just a bit too gloomy and overbearing and on the
Mhm.
nose. Um, and yeah, the lyrics don't really do it for me either. About like you bought a guitar to punish your ma. You
Oh
thought,
yeah,
rhyming cool with school, and just it feels a bit juvenile to
I love it. That's me.
me.
I love that song. But
um,
we'll agree to disagree on that one.
that's why it's fun to do these things because I get to hear other people's. It's surprising to see what other people like and don't like.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Have a Cigar is a great song. It's really funny. It's from the perspective of this sleazy record executive who's trying to schmooze with the band and he doesn't really know a lot about them. He says, "Oh, which one's Pink?"
Oh
which
yeah,
is, I'm guessing, is something that they heard a lot throughout their
probably.
career.
They're like, yeah, is that
Um,
one of you?
Wish
Cool.
You Were Here, I think, is a fantastic song, because I feel like it has like a universal kind of emotional resonance with anybody who's missing someone can relate to
Right.
this. And I personally remember my friend Lisa, back when we were teenagers, she just moved to Canada recently, and she had a poster in her bedroom that she made, which was just pictures of all her old friends, and in between them, she wrote the lyrics to "Wish You Were Here," um, and it was just cool seeing these lyrics that just have this universal appeal applied to this whole other situation. Um,
Wow.
I'm not really sure. I think originally the song is meant to be another song for Sid
Did.
Barrett.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, but it just has like so many poignant lyrics about like we're just too.
Are you tired of seeing unattractive people? Now, with Face Swap smart glasses, you don't have to. The award winning machine learning algorithm can replace any face you see with the face of some random attractive celebrities of your choosing. They're also offering a beta option for non celebrity faces. You just have to give it 15 images of your friend or your crush or whoever you like, and that person can be added to your face swap pool. Order now for spaceswapsmartglasses.com.
Welcome back from that very spontaneous and disruptive commercial break that cut Alon off mid-sentence. He was talking about "Wish You Were Here." I'll hand it back over to Alon to kind of finish his thoughts on that album.
I guess my favorite song on here is probably "Shine On You Crazy Diamond." Um,
Cool.
it's a fantastic song, and it's amazing for such a long song to never lose your attention, to kind of keep you engaged the whole
Mm-hmm.
time. But
You
it's
like
just super well written.
you like
Um,
you know how it's kind of split into the first section before the three songs and the second sections. Do you like the first or the last section better, or you kind of consider it all one song? If you had to
I
pick.
just kind of consider it all one song. I can't pick a favorite between the two.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
But yeah, it's amazing how like the vocals don't even start until like 5 minutes into the song.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, it still manages to keep your attention, and you don't get bored listening to it. It was one of my favorite songs that when I was first getting into Floyd, and it still is. I could listen to it as forever. It has infinite replay value for me.
Yeah, definitely a great song.
What about you? What's your number four?
All right, my number four is which one is it? The Wall.
Mhm.
So their 11th album. Uh, this is kind of where I see them going more to that art rock or progressive pop direction while retaining some of their previous progressive rock sound. It's a longer album, a double album. I like how you said it's like a rock opera concept album. That's kind of how I feel about it too. And every track on here is written by Roger Waters, except for a few where he collaborated with Gilmore. And on one track, he collaborates with Bob Ezrin. But it kind of reminds me of the Beatles' White Album in that there are a few of the songs are potentially and arguably some of the best songs of all time on here. And it's like a really long double album that might be a bit too long and has a few duds as well and filler tracks. So that way, it reminds me a lot of the Beatles' White Album.
Hmm.
Did you feel that way too? Like, I don't know what you think about
So
the
I
term.
can I definitely agree with you that it on the fact that it has some of the best songs ever, and also some duds, and that I could shrink it. If I was to make a mix, I would shrink it down into one album. But
Yeah.
I can't compare it to the White Album, just because I grew up with the White Album. It was one of the very first rock albums I ever listened to.
Oh
So I
yeah.
love pretty much every song on the White Album,
Oh
except
wow.
for maybe the
Revolution
annoying, like,
9.
I mean, not Revolution 9.
Okay.
And maybe not Why Don't We Do It on the Road?
Or
Um,
even like Wild Honey Pie or like Honey Pie.
but I mean, Wild Honey Pie is like 30 seconds long.
Yeah.
And but again, I'm talking through the goggles of nostalgia, right? This was
Yeah.
like literally my introduction to rock music, right? So
Right.
everything on that album, I love every song, even the ones that people laugh at. Like everyone's got something to hide except me and my monkey. I love that one, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I definitely agree with you about the wall that it's you know it's a bit overbearing as a 2 hour thing, especially
Yeah.
since it's just Roger Waters' voice, right? You get almost no harmonies from the other band members.
Yeah. Yeah. That's well, Uncomfortably Numb, you have like really great vocals too from David Gilmour. So there definitely are
Mm.
some exceptions, but I agree there's a lot, it's a lot more of the Roger Waters show. And I do think it's a lot like the Beatles' White Album, like in how it makes me feel. And there are 30-second songs on here too, like a song called Stop. And there's like a lot of there's like 5 songs on this on the wall that are under 2 minutes in length, like between the 30-second and 2 minute parts, which is it really gives me that vibe of White Album. But I guess you have some nostalgia for the White Album for sure.
Yeah.
For me, I think my favorite song actually is Comfortably Numb. I feel like a bit of a simpleton saying that because it's like one of their most popular songs, but it is just really, really a great song. It's epic. I think everyone loves this song. There's 2 great guitar solos, great vocal melodies and harmonies, great string parts. It's a collab between Gilmour and Waters, and you have lead vocals from both of them. So it's really just the one that feels like more of a Pink Floyd song. It's more of a collaboration. You hear what the band can do. I really like Hey You as well, which is the one that you said you like the best. That's probably my second favorite, and another one of the most epic sounding songs on the album with catchy vocals, good chord progression, great lead guitars. And I think it even has a nice callback to the motif from Another Brick in the Wall too, if I recall correctly. I remember that motif coming back like in quite a few of the songs on this album, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I love in the beginning of Hey You how it starts off with the guitar playing arpeggios and then that like fretless bass comes in with
Oh yeah, I heard that
so
too.
good.
It's so good. I love fretless bass sound. It's Yeah, the song
Yeah,
also kind of reminds me a little bit of Us and Them from Dark Side of the Moon.
a little
Like
bit. Yeah.
has a little bit of that vibe. All right, how
Mhm.
about your number 3?
My number 3 is Metal. Um, Now, this might be unreasonably high for most people because, like I said, it is my first Pink Floyd album that I actually
Right.
bought and listened to. Um, but yeah, I absolutely love Echoes, which is probably the first long form Pink Floyd song. I think it's like 15 minutes or something like that, that actually holds my attention all the way through. And I like everything about it, even the whale noises section in the middle.
Oh wow, you even like that? No, I'm
I even
surprised.
like that. um, and the other songs, apart from Echoes, took me a bit longer to get into, but I do like them all. Um, I think Saint Tropez is kind of like this
Mhm.
fun little bouncy kind of song. It has like a beachy feel to it almost.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of jazzy or something. Or like, but yeah, I thought that too. Like I noted, it sounds like something you'd listen to relax to on vacation, and is a bit jazzy.
yeah. It kind of has like nonsense lyrics. I think they wrote it as a bit of a joke,
Mhm.
but I really enjoy it. Um, and yeah, one of these days, the first song, um, it's like it's a really unique sound. It doesn't even sound like a rock band playing. I don't know how they get that like do 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 that sort of bass tone,
Yeah.
but it works really great. Um, yeah,
Cool.
and like we're talking about Shameless again before.
Yeah.
I think
Good
it's
dog.
kind of cool that you get to see a bit of their their lighter side, having a bit of fun, as
Yeah.
opposed to some of the later albums.
Yeah, that is cool. This might be like the last album where they really have that kind of fun and silly vibe to them that they had in their early days, like Piper of the Gates of Dawn. Like it kind of
Mm,
becomes like all dark and serious after that.
yeah, yeah.
So is Echoes your favorite on this one?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Cool. All right. My number three is what is it? Animals.
Okay.
So their 10th album, another concept album, kind of like The Wall being a concept album as well. But this one's more like a little bit like Animal Farm, the book. Um, and I consider this part of their progressive rock period, like after their psychedelic period, so in terms of the sound of the music. My favorite song on here is actually Dogs, but I definitely see what you're saying about the lyrics, like Waters being like really angry and like almost like too overly harsh and simplistic in his views. Um, but I like the music. Like Gilmore and Waters both contributed, and to the writing and to the lead vocals too. So I really like when they both sing. You get a little bit of both of their sounds, and obviously lead guitar from Gilmore is always great. I like the harmonized guitar parts in here too. Great synthesizer soundscapes, and it has some dog sounds like some of their other songs, but it's not too bad, and it actually kind of fits the theme of the song, so I'm good with that.
It's a different dog this time. It's not Mademoiselle Knobs anymore.
Yeah, I guess not.
These are angrier, meaner dogs.
Right. And yeah, like you said, this one it sounds like it's about cutthroat businessmen, and then the sheep are like the mindless herd and cogs in the wheel, and the pigs are the leaders of society who pull the strings and make the rules, or at least that's my general understanding of the concept.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, it's kind of cool. Obviously, it's like a oversimplification, but it's, if you read something like Animal Farm, it's a commentary on society and governments and all that kind of thing. So I kind of just treat it like that, so that I'm not just thinking of it as like Roger Waters being super angry about everything.
He is though, but yeah.
Yeah. But my second favorite song is Sheep, the one that you liked as well. So I also really like that. And we mentioned how the like long vocal line bleeds into the synthesizer, which sounds really cool.
So good.
There's like some evil, sinister sounding synth parts in that song, which are really cool. So yeah, I think it's a really great album. Like honestly, their top four for me are just like classics. Like I actually really like The Wall, but I think it is slightly overrated because my top three I like better. But like these are classics to me.
Yeah, absolutely. All of their albums, even the stuff that I ranked lower, it was really hard for me to even rank these because they're all so good, you know,
Yeah.
except for maybe
Right.
Omaguma.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one was like bottom two for both of us. So I think we could safely say that one's not a classic.
Yeah.
How about your number two?
So this is the unpopular opinion one. My number two is The Final Cut.
Oh, really? I totally
Yes.
forgot that you hadn't mentioned that so far, and I am shocked. That's your number two.
It
Wow.
honestly came dangerously close to even coming up on my number one.
Wow.
And this was the last album with Roger Waters. And like you said, it's basically a Roger Waters solo album. And I know that lots of people don't like this one very much, and they have a good reason. You don't really get much contribution from the other band members. There's no harmony vocals. There's very few David Gilmour guitar solos. Um, there's no like crowd pleaser sing along songs like Another Brick in the Wall.
Yeah.
But for me, the thing that pushes this over to the top is the lyrics.
Oh, really?
It's kind of a concept album about England after World War II and about how they were promised things would be so much better after the war and how that didn't really come true, how post-war England was just like a really miserable place. And I think the reason I love the lyrics so much here is because they're so specific, right?
Yeah.
When you get songs like Us and Them, it's another song about war, but it talks about it in a very like general terms. It feels like a very detached song, right? It doesn't feel like they're very like emotionally connected in a song like Us and Them. But here they're talking about specific people and specific details of their lives. Um, like when the tigers broke free is about Roger himself as a boy. He discovers the note in his mom's drawer, which is the note that was sent by the government to tell her that his father had died.
Oh wow.
And yeah, there's like that one lyric, and kind old King George sent mother a note when he heard that father was gone. It was, I recall, in the form of the scroll with gold leaf and all. And I found it one day in a drawer of old photographs hidden away, and my eyes still grow damp to remember His Majesty signed with his own rubber stamp. I just love that perfect mix of like sarcasm of like, oh, kind old King George sent mother a note, and just like how poignant and sad it is. And I love that, he's able to, compared with animals where he's just pointing the finger at other people, he's able to actually like look at himself and talk about something that obviously affected his life very much. And apart from stuff like that, there's also songs like, I think one of the few in the Hero's Return, they're about this soldier who comes home from the war and he doesn't really know what to do with himself, so he becomes a schoolmaster, possibly the sadistic schoolmaster from The Wall. And I love how Roger Waters uses his voice on The Hero's Return, because he kind of has two modes of singing. He has this like loud bellowing voice, and then he has this like quiet, soft, very soft, like almost whisper singing voice. And in the song, he uses both. So when he's singing about from the perspective of the sadistic schoolmaster, he's like, Jesus, Jesus, what's it all about? So he's just like doing this annoying bellowing voice. But then in the choruses, he goes into singing in this like quiet voice when he's singing about the personal life of this soldier, and how he's dealing with PTSD and can't open up to anyone. And he's basically talking to his own wife while she's asleep, because he can't talk to her when she's awake. And he's singing about how all you can hear are the gunner's dying words on the intercom, and then it transitions into the song "The Gunner's Dream," which is, I think, is a really cool, like it's almost like a movie flashback, right? Like where one scene goes into another, and then in "The Gunner's Dream," you hear about this pilot who's just been shot down, and he knows he's going to die soon. He's parachuting from the sky. And I think he describes it as he's in the space between the heavens and the corner of some foreign field, which is like, it could be literally like, the heavens, like he just fell from his plane, but it could be like the heavens, like he knows he's about to die. And he has a dream about, how much better things are going to be after the war. And I think it's just like these really personal details that for me make this such just like a gut-wrenching album.
That's cool.
And I've been sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think you notice the lyrical stuff a lot more than I do. So I didn't pick up on a lot of it. When I listen to it, I don't pick up on a lot of it, but it sounds like you're more in tune with that side of it, where I'm more like thinking about it more from the musical side. But I could probably listen to this with a new perspective on it now, after like kind of hearing your take on the lyrics. And I do like and I do listen to some of the lyrics for Pink Floyd, so it's not like I'm completely oblivious to them, but for me it's like I'm like 95% about the music and like 5% about the lyrics, but it seems like you're a bit more balanced between the two.
Yeah, with an album like this, you definitely have to expand that 5% of the lyrics, because musically it's a pleasant album, but it's not as up there as the other Floyd releases. It is definitely like a very lyrical album, and a lot of the songs, they don't even sound like rock music. It sounds like somber piano ballads, right? So it takes a bit more getting into, I find. Except for, I think the one outlier on this album is Not Now John, which is just like this angry kind of industrial sounding song, which I also really love.
Nice. Do you have a favorite on here?
That's really hard to pick. I think it might be Two Suns in the Sunset, which
Okay.
is it's about nuclear war. The second sun is an atomic bomb going off.
Hmm.
Um, kind of a gloomy way to end an album, but I just love like the difference between how the verses are just like these quiet piano ballads, and then the choruses they almost go into like screaming. Um, very
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, that was my second favorite as well.
Hmm.
That's the album closer, I think. And they even pull in a bit of the progginess and have some time signature changes in that one, if I recall correctly.
Yes, you're right. They
Cool.
actually Nick Mason couldn't play on that one because he couldn't figure out the changes, so they had
Oh,
to
really?
turn drummer. Yeah,
That's kind of surprising because he's able to play on some other ones that have some cool changes.
yeah.
Hmm. Interesting. All right. Well, my number two is Dark Side of the Moon, their eighth album. And I think this is their best selling album. I believe it's certified 14 times platinum in the UK, estimated sales over 45 million copies worldwide. So, really, really, I think it's one of the best selling albums of all time. Like, not even just Pink Floyd albums. I think it's in like the top five or something. Um, and this is really cool. It's kind of progressive rock with psychedelia and experimentation thrown in, but the songs are also kind of catchy and accessible and like something that can appeal to the masses. So I think it found that right balance of like something that critics and musicians and the general public could all really like. And my favorite song here would be Us and Them, which is actually by Richard Wright. But Gilmore does the lead vocals. I think the chord progression there is pretty cool. I like the dynamics between soft verses and the powerful, intense, and epic chorus. Saxophone solos are always good to hear in Pink Floyd songs. The great backing gospel choir vocals are always a fun Pink Floyd signature sound, which I like. The echoing lead vocals I think are cool, where they're going black, black, black,
Yeah.
and blue, blue. It just sounds cool. Yeah, so I really like that song. My second favorite is probably Brain Damage, which is by Waters, and Waters does the vocals. It's kind of got a similar vibe to Us and Them to me. Um, but yeah, pretty catchy, singing about the lunatic is in the grass.
Mhm.
And the chorus there, it has that soft verse, powerful chorus thing again, where that's kind of the verse, and the chorus does like and if the band you're in starts playing different tunes, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon. So they actually like put the album title in there, and it's
I think that's also about Sid Barrett.
yeah, I think so too. Yeah, the reference to the lunatic and the band you're in playing different tunes, it definitely seems like it's about Barrett to me. Cool. Now we're at our number ones. What is your favorite Pink Floyd album? I think it's the one
Dark
I was
Side of
just
the
talking
Moon.
about.
Yeah. Well, I'm just basically going to say all the same things that you just said about it.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic album. There's nothing I can say about this that hasn't been said a million times before. It's critically acclaimed. Everybody loves it.
Mhm.
It's a bit hard for me to enjoy it now the same way that I did when I first heard it, just because I've heard it so many times. I've watched The Dark Side of Oz. I've listened to The Dub Side of the Moon, which is
Oh, yeah.
a reggae cover of the entire Dark Side of the Moon album,
Oh,
which I
that's amazing.
highly
I have to hear
recommend.
that.
It's so good.
I would have to listen
Um,
to that.
but yeah, it's great. The songs flow into each other, and it just feels like a single 45-minute piece of music because of that. And it almost feels wrong when you hear one of those songs on the radio,
Yeah.
and like when they just play like Time, and then
Yeah.
you expect it to just flow into the rest of the album, but then it goes into something, something something
Then
else
it
on the
goes into
radio.
Katy Perry or something.
I don't know what radio station you're listening to that follows up Time with a Katy Perry song. But
Yeah,
it's
it'd
like,
probably be more like AC/DC or something,
yeah, probably,
like
yeah,
a classic rock station.
Q107, yeah, but it just feels so wrong when you're like, no, it's supposed to go into Breathe Reprise after this. Um, but yeah, it's a great album. It's a great mix of the chillness of the band mixed with the darkness and cynicism of Roger Waters' lyrics. Um, there's time is about how life is super short and how easy it is to waste it. Money is about how it's about materialism and how we're all greedy pigs who just want to eat caviar and buy a football team.
Are we
Um,
all pigs or are we all sheep?
uh, I think we're all sheep that wish we were pigs.
Yeah.
And yeah, Brain Damage is about madness. And I love how, like, just in the first verse, he compares the type of madness of people who don't follow social norms, like, you know, you have to stay on the path, don't walk on the grass, with the madness of politicians. Because when he sings about the paper folds their the paper holds their folded faces to the floor, and every day the paper boy brings more. He's singing about the politicians in the newspaper, and they're like the other type of lunatics that he's singing about. Um, so I thought that was like really profound when I was 14. Um, and yeah, it's a great album, and I love that you can listen to it as like a social commentary album.
Mhm.
Um, but it's not like in your face political like Animals or like the Final Cut. So
Yeah.
you can just listen to it as just like a chill out album. You can
Mhm.
get stoned to it, and you can enjoy all the weird noises and all the
For
little
sure.
clips of people talking, which is a really cool addition to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, number one album for sure.
Sweet. Well, my number one is Wish You Were Here,
Hmm.
which is the one that they followed up Dark Side of the Moon with in 1975, their ninth album. Also sold really well, but not as well. I guess it might have been a letdown to them, but it's funny that like a letdown for them, it sold 20 million copies, I think. And this has a really good mix of all the vibes. Like it's got some of that progressive rock, some of this like psychedelic art rock sounding stuff on it too, bluesy influence. I think it's a masterpiece. It's hard for me to even pick a favorite song on here because I really like all of them so much. Um, but I'm gonna be like uh, controversial and go against what you said and say "Welcome to the Machine's" my favorite.
Oh,
That's my number one.
I'm never going to the show again.
And this one's written by Waters. Gilmore does the lead vocals. I kind of like it because it's different from a lot of the other Pink Floyd songs of the time, and that it's very synth driven. I
Hmm.
like that there's the cool time signature changes in it, and yeah, I like the lyrics too. You said you didn't like the lyrics as much.
Hmm.
I think it's welcome my son, welcome to the machine. It's like about someone who dreamed of being like a big guitar playing rock star, I believe. And they're realizing that they're really just becoming part of like an industrial machine that's like a money making machine, or at least that's my interpretation of it. So I do feel like it's kind of about the band, like they wanted to be these big rock stars and didn't know what it meant, and now they're like kind of understanding it. At least that's my interpretation of it.
I think that's a good interpretation. I feel that's what it feels like it's about to me. Like when he's singing, like you bought a guitar to punish your ma.
Yeah, like they
And
were rebelling when they were young. They didn't like
yeah,
school. They mentioned that.
yeah,
But they're not dumb, and they have something to say. They want to be artists. They want to be famous. They want to make money, but they don't really know what it means. And then like they're in it and now they understand the whole like industrial machine and the whole like business side that they're a part of, which is kind of cool. I really like Shine On You Crazy Diamond as well. That's probably my second favorite one that you said, and that being about Sid. But everything's great. Like Have a Cigar is great. Wish You Were Here. Like it's kind of cool that it's only 5 songs, but they're all like so epic. Yeah, that I guess that's it. We're wrapped up the whole Pink Floyd discography. Like,
yeah.
any closing remarks? Anything that we didn't talk about that we should mention here? I think we covered.
Um,
most of it.
I guess just like going off on a tangent, have you ever listened to any of the solo albums by Sid Barrett or by David Gilmour or Roger Waters or any of those?
I've listened to David Gilmour, what's it called, like On an Island.
On an Island, yeah.
That's the one I've listened to that I kind of like that. And I think I've listened to a couple Sid Barrett solo songs and a couple Roger Waters solo songs, but haven't done the full album from start to finish for either of them yet. So I'm kind of curious. I kind of want to. Are there some that you'd recommend?
Um, can't remember specific names. I also listened to On an Island and I really loved it. But it's cool to listen to them and just kind of you almost see like the individual ingredients of the recipe.
Yeah.
Um, like
Yeah.
when you listen to a David Gilmour album, you kind of
It's missing the waters.
it's missing the waters. Like it's very pleasant and
Yeah.
it almost sounds like your grandpa just like pulling out his guitar to sing you some nice songs. But
Yeah.
I think my friend earlier described it best when he said that like um, Roger Waters is like the teeth in Pink Floyd, right? He's the one who gives them that extra edge that like that elevates it from just being like gentle chill out music to
For
something
sure.
exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, like you don't hear Roger Waters on the Endless River, which is just real, it is just chill out music.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and
Although,
like
yeah, I guess he's not on it, right? I don't think he's on
no,
it.
he hates the rest of the band at this point.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, like on some of the Roger Waters' albums, the solo albums, it's almost like too much teeth. It's
Yeah.
just like all teeth and
They're
no
just an
melody.
angry guy like complaining about politicians in the world and everybody being a backstabbing cutthroat businessman who with no soul.
Pretty much, yeah. It's just like a negative Yelp review for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I love that's it's interesting. Like, there's definitely some people that like they're almost like musical soulmates, and like they're good musicians on their own. But then, like, if you pair them, the sum becomes like so much greater than the sum of its parts. Like, they're almost like perfect when they work together,
Mhm.
having that Waters and Gilmore effect. There's definitely some other musicians like that. I kind of think that like Paul McCartney and John Lennon even
That
are
was
kind of
the
like that
example I
too.
was just thinking of. Yeah, they kind of Paul McCartney is like more on like the poppy side, just like writing
Mm,
these very radio friendly songs, and John Lennon was more,
he's
writing.
cynical. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a lot more cynical. He was the Roger Waters of the Beatles.
Yeah. It's weird because I kind of like sad or angry music, but between Waters and Gilmore and between McCartney and Lennon, like my favorite is still Gilmore and McCartney, which
Mm.
kind of surprising. Like I like the kind of like simpler, softer, happier um, person in those duos a bit more when I hear them on their own.
I think part of it is also that their singing is more palatable.
That might
Like
be it too. Yeah,
John, Paul McCartney
better singer.
and David Gilmour, they're more like a traditionally better singer. Whereas like Roger Waters, like I said, he's got these two modes. He's got this like bellowing kind of bark of a voice, or he's got this like very up close
Yeah,
wispy voice, right? Like you wouldn't consider him
true.
traditionally a good singer, but
Yeah, but I could
some
listen to like progressive and technical death metal and stuff where they're definitely not. I don't know if that's it. Like, there's probably something more to it. It's more in with the compositional styles too. I think, um, kind of jiving with me more. But there, yeah, maybe something about their voice, the sound of their voice too. Yeah.
Mhm, definitely. Well, next time we get together, we need to watch the Wall movie and get
All
real
right.
depressed.
Sounds like a good plan. Thanks for joining me for Bands and Beers with Brennan. Hope some people watching found this interesting and check out more Pink Floyd stuff if you haven't heard it all, or re-listen to it again if you have and see it in a new perspective. Peace out, everybody.